In the fast-paced world of live television, where energy, rhythm, and familiarity are everything, even the smallest shift can feel significant. And today, something felt different. Not dramatically different, not in a way that immediately raised alarms, but just enough for longtime viewers to pause and pay attention. For those who tune in regularly, the show has become more than just a daily routine. It's a space of comfort, a place where conversations feel natural, laughter comes easily, and the connection between hosts and audience feels genuine. That's why when something subtly changes, people notice a shift in energy. From the very beginning of the episode, there was a tone that felt slightly more subdued than usual. The opening moments, typically filled with lively banter and quick humor, felt a little more measured. The pacing wasn't off, but it wasn't quite the same either. It wasn't about what was said, it was about how it was said. The pauses felt longer, the smiles felt softer, the energy just a little more reflective. And while nothing appeared outwardly wrong, viewers who know the show well could sense that something had shifted beneath the surface. Sometimes it's not the big moments that leave an impression. It's the quiet ones. Throughout the episode, there were small interactions that stood out, not because they were dramatic, but because they felt unusually genuine. A glance held a second longer, a response that felt more thoughtful than playful, a moment where laughter didn't quite reach its usual height. None of these things were negative. In fact, many viewers described them as real. But together, they created an atmosphere that felt different. It didn't take long for viewers to start sharing their thoughts. As the show aired, comments began appearing across social media platforms. Some viewers couldn't quite explain what they were feeling, but they knew something wasn't the same. Was it just me, or did today feel a little different? The vibe seemed calmer than usual. Not bad, just different. Others described the episode as more emotional, even if nothing explicitly emotional happened. And that's the interesting part. There was no big announcement, no breaking news, no obvious reason for concern, yet the audience felt something. When people watch a show consistently, they begin to pick up on patterns. They recognize tones, rhythms, and emotional cues without even realizing it. So when those patterns shift, even slightly, it becomes noticeable. It's similar to walking into a room you know well and sensing that something has changed, even if you can't immediately identify what it is. That's what today's episode felt like for many viewers. Not unfamiliar, but not entirely the same. As the episode continued, the overall tone seemed to lean more toward reflection than excitement. Conversations felt a bit deeper, responses carried a little more weight, even lighthearted topics had an underlying sense of calm. This wasn't a negative shift. In fact, some viewers appreciated it. They described the episode as refreshing, grounded, and even comforting. Because in a world where everything often feels loud and fast-paced, a quieter moment can stand out in a meaningful way. One of the reasons the show has remained so popular is its authenticity. Viewers don't just watch for entertainment, they watch for connection. And sometimes the most powerful moments aren't the most energetic ones. They're the ones that feel real. Today's episode seemed to lean into that reality. It didn't feel overly produced. It didn't feel forced. It felt human. And that authenticity may be exactly what viewers were responding to. It's interesting how something so subtle can spark so much conversation. But that's the nature of connection. When audiences feel emotionally invested, they become more aware of the details. They notice tone, they notice timing, they notice energy. So even a small shift can feel significant, not because something is wrong, but because something is different. Of course, whenever viewers sense a change, speculation follows. Some wondered if there was something happening behind the scenes. Others assumed it might simply be one of those days where the energy is naturally lower. But the truth is, there was no clear explanation. And that's okay. Not every moment needs a reason. Sometimes, a moment is just a moment. In many ways, today's episode highlighted something important. Not every show needs to be high energy to be impactful. Not every moment needs to be filled with laughter to be meaningful. Sometimes, the quieter episodes are the ones that resonate the most, because they remind us that behind the cameras, behind the lights, and behind the routine, there are real people with real emotions, having real moments. If anything, today's subtle shift may have strengthened the connection between the show and its audience. Because viewers didn't turn away, they leaned in. They paid closer attention. They shared their thoughts. They engaged in conversations. And that kind of engagement speaks volumes. Not all impactful moments are loud. Some are quiet. Some are subtle. Some are almost unnoticeable until you reflect on them later. Today's episode may not have been the most energetic, it may not have been the most exciting, but it left an impression. And sometimes, that's even more powerful. In the end, nothing dramatic happened. There was no shocking reveal that left viewers speechless, no unexpected twist that changed everything in an instant. No major announcement that dominated headlines or sparked intense debate. And yet, something about it stayed with people. Not because it was loud or overwhelming, but because it was quiet, subtle, almost easy to miss unless you were really paying attention. It was the kind of moment that doesn't demand attention, but gently holds it. A slight shift in energy, a softer tone in conversation, a presence that felt just a little more grounded than usual. And somehow, that was enough. Because in that quiet difference, viewers found something real, something honest, something that didn't feel rehearsed or perfectly timed, but instead felt natural, like a genuine moment unfolding on its own. It reminded people that not everything needs to be big to matter. Not every moment needs to be filled with excitement to be meaningful. Sometimes it's the pauses that speak the loudest, the moments in between, the parts that aren't planned. And maybe that's why it resonated so deeply, because in a world where so much content feels fast, polished, and predictable, this felt different. It felt human. It reminded viewers that even in the most familiar spaces, the ones they visit every single day, there is still room for change. Still room for something unexpected. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, almost unnoticeable shift that makes you stop and think. It also served as a reminder that consistency doesn't mean sameness, that even the most routine experiences can carry new emotions, new tones, new layers that reveal themselves when you least expect it. And perhaps most importantly, it showed that connection doesn't always come from big moments. It doesn't always come from headlines or major events. Sometimes connection comes from simply feeling something, even if you can't fully explain it, even if you don't have the words for it right away. Because those are the moments that linger, the ones that stay with you long after the episode ends, the ones you think about later without even realizing why. So no, nothing dramatic happened, but something meaningful did. A reminder, a feeling, a quiet shift that proved something powerful, that sometimes the smallest changes, the softest moments, and the quietest energies can leave the strongest impact of all. Maybe that's why fans noticed, not because something was wrong, but because something felt real. And in a world where so much feels scripted, fast, and predictable, a moment of quiet authenticity can stand out more than anything else.